Hey, what's up, gentlemen? Welcome back. It has been a minute since we've all got together and did one of these conversations, but I know we've had a lot of changes going on. I guess wasn't planned, but now we're all on the West Coast, soon to be.
Soon to be. That's true.
Yeah, so a little bit easier to record these episodes. So I guess today we want to talk about, we had mentioned throwing around the idea of talking about the wealth gap. And, we've all seen how much has grown since the pandemic, how much from the top, the wealthy to the middle class to lower class. So I guess we can just kick it off with why do we think the gap has increased so much?
Yeah, man. So first of all, I guess I'd say everyone may not know that the wealth gap has changed substantially since the pandemic. I don't have any like direct statistics in front of me. Maybe at some point in the show, Lewis, if you find some, feel free to share. But just in general, I think we've seen that the wealthy people or the people that from like a baseline standard are middle class or wealthy have increased their net worth substantially over the last like 2 years, and anybody else who would be considered like lower middle class or poor just by like general standards have either gotten poorer or definitely haven't increased their net worth. And so one of the big reasons why I wanted to talk about this, and I know you guys probably feel the same way, is that I don't see that trend getting any better. And I would just be curious to know, like, if there's something that we could do that people could do now to improve their situation in the future, and what you think that could be, because I don't have the answers, Sway.
Well, I'll touch on a little bit. Like, I don't have the actual stats either, but I'll touch on a little bit of why, just from the broad view of looking at it, of why I think it has increased so much. And if you look at, the increase and the main drivers of it is, the stock market. You look at the housing market. You can even look at the money that was printed and that was given out during the pandemic as well, where a lot of that money went to. And I think probably to not dive too much into it, but probably the big reason why I think the gap has increased so much is that a lot of the wealthy had money available. Not only did they have money available, but they had a lot of money available to take advantage of the markets being down and getting into them. So as things go up, a lot of them benefited from being in the stock market, being in the housing market, which only, for a lot of money into it, and there's a big jump like we've seen, then that's going to attribute to the gap increasing.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think so there's a couple things where, like, for one, just naturally by the fact that compound interest is much more effective the more money you have in it, naturally that gap would really never collapse unless someone who's wealthier than you is making that wealth grow at a lower rate or that's compounding slower than you. So if someone has a billion and it's making 8% every year, clearly their wealth is going to grow faster than if I only have, $1,000 and it's growing 8% each year. It's going to grow, but it's going to grow so much slower than someone who has that huge amount. And then furthermore, kind of speaking to what you were talking about, Lewis, when people see that gap and thinking about my own psyche and how it's changed over time, a lot of people who are inexperienced and might have a lower amount of wealth, less experience with investing, see this thing going down, it's red, and they're probably panicking and selling, which in some cases may actually be locking in losses. And then that, for people who are experienced, are like, okay, I'm riding this thing down. And then, like you said, they've got that liquid cash available to then buy in once it's kind of bottomed out, or possibly even along the route on the middle. So those factors in and of itself are going to, just inevitably, the gap is going to continue to grow. There's, by the nature of how things are, there's not much to stop it.
I think the same thing. And Jareen, to your point, you brought up the question of how we can stop the gap or how we can stop the increase so much. I think, there's new assets that's coming into the field, like, the whole crypto and NFT space, where I think a lot of our generation, younger generation, has gotten in and made money off of it. But at the same time, some big players are getting involved, but once the big money gets involved in crypto, which is we're seeing more and more in this space of bigger names. You can look at some of the celebrities or athletes that are taking part of their salary in cryptocurrency. Again, they'll probably control that market like they control the stock market. But I think that is giving us, of a younger generation, some advantages to help close the gap somewhat, to help increase our net worth. But I think over the long run, the long haul, I don't know. It's hard to see a picture where there is a big jump in closing that gap in the near future, at least from my viewpoint.
Yeah, I think you bring up some really good points. Like the compound interest piece, I think, is a huge factor. And I think if you go back a step before that, even, I think the ability to buy assets and the people that already own assets really benefit from either a down market or a global pandemic, where, to your point, they can capitalize on these opportunities and ride the wave back up and get even more wealth under management. But I also think about like the mental aspect of it, right? So if you think about investing as a strategy, there's a book really good called The Psychology of Money. And in that book, it talks about how investing and just like managing money is so much more of an emotional and a psychological thing than it is like a mathematics and an education thing. And I think that, like, when I look at that wealth gap, instead of focusing on like what people have versus what people don't have, because that's a huge part of it, I actually focus on the mentality of the wealthy versus the mentality of the poor and the middle class.
Exactly.
Because to me, that gap is widening, and the wealth is just following that gap, right? Like the amount of people that actually understand what money does, the amount of people that actually understand how compound interest works versus the amount of people who don't really realize the power of it or the strength of it, I think is starting to shift even more than what we've seen in the past. And I think that's a huge factor in why a young person that has a certain mentality based on his surroundings, his environment, whatever he's been taught, has a much higher probability of being wealthy in the future versus someone his same age who doesn't have those like values or that insight to say like, this is how you treat money and this is how money is supposed to work. So like I do agree with you that like at the core, it's where the money's going. But I think a deeper level is who understands how money works and has like the emotional ability to put the money where it should go for the long term versus who A, doesn't understand how money works, or B, doesn't have the emotional ability to put it where it should go in thoughts that it would increase in the long term. So I'd be curious to know like how you guys feel about like what that difference is and where those differences come from.
Well, I think a lot, just from that viewpoint, I like the point that you brought up of looking at what the wealthy do and following what they do. But I think a lot of times, and I think what prevents people is the comparison aspect of that too. Is, I'll never be able to achieve that. It's too late. I'm already 30, 40 years old. I've missed my window to invest. So that's where I think from an individual standpoint, like it's good to take those principles and stuff of what the wealthy is doing, what people are doing to generate wealth, and just apply it to yourself personally. But get in the game and do strategies that work from you, and just get out of the race of comparing yourself to others and just compare yourself to where you were at a year ago, where you were at 5 years ago. And I think that's how, from an individual standpoint, you can not so much worry about closing that wealth gap, but increasing your wealth personally, to prolong, your money growth.
That's awesome. Yeah, I agree. It's you. Oh, go ahead. Were you speaking, Lewis?
Nah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I think you hit up a bunch of great points. One is only compete with yourself. So if you're comparing with other people and actually worried about this concept of a wealth gap, it's just energy you're wasting, to be honest, except for what Doreen said, which is look what the wealthy are doing. And then to Lewis's point, sometimes it could be hard to look at what they're doing because what they're doing may not be accessible at this point. If they're investing in, a private jet collection, there's not much we can glean from that. But
exactly.
You look, and a lot of people that have gotten to that point have shared their journey and have possibly written books, have documented how they got from A to B. You might look and feel like A is way far ahead of you, but you might look for other people that might be in a journey or a position similar to you and what they did to kind of pull themselves up. But getting a breadth of examples and inspirations could definitely be something where you find someone that you can really identify with. And then I guess kind of to all these points, I feel like investing isn't really a one-dimensional thing. So a lot of people think investing is just, okay, I'm putting money in the stock market or something that's going to appreciate over time. But the probably biggest aspect to that is investing in yourself. So
yes,
it's, you've got these things, but it's to your point, you're not going to keep it. You're not going to understand it. You're not going to be able to respond correctly. If things drop, if things are going up, you're going to act instinctively and impulsively. And furthermore, just, I don't know, that drive to learn and desire to do more, because you could just stop by saying, hey, I'm just going to invest here. But you can also look, hey, are there other avenues? Can I do this better? Can I get, for every dollar that I put in right now, I'm making 5 cents. Can I get that to 8, and be okay with 8? Can I get that to 12? How can I do that? How can I, who can I look to? What avenues get me there? And what does it take to get to that higher return? And from there, ultimately, you'll look up and be like, if you actually care about the wealth gap, you'd be like, oh, I actually did a pretty good job of, leveling myself up. But if you're focusing on that, you'll just see how far you have to go. And it's going to be super intimidating.
Yeah. I think that's a good point, Joe, especially the investing in yourself, especially if someone's starting out on a smaller scale with investing, someone that has, $500 to $1,000 to invest, they're going to get a lot more out of investing in themselves than just going and throwing that money in the stock market or somewhere starting out. And especially in the long run, immediate investment. And I think people forget a lot. Like, a lot of the people who are wealthy now, they started out with investing in themselves, courses, coaching, books. That knowledge goes a long way.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the more I think about the whole concept of a wealth gap, it's like I almost think that there's a knowledge gap way more than there is a wealth gap. Like I look at the actions of people who have accumulated a lot of wealth, and if you really go searching for it, like the blueprint is there, but how many people know that blueprint? And then there's that action piece that goes along with the blueprint that says how many people are going to follow that blueprint until they reach whatever level of wealth that they're trying to attain, right? Like, because to your point, it's not a comparison between you and someone else. I just am curious, like, if you all were coaching someone, let's say you have someone who's new, freshly about to graduate from college, like, what advice would you give them? They haven't earned a dime and you want to help them grow their wealth so that they're not one of the ones who 10, 20, 30 years from now are looking up and their net worth has either stayed stagnant or declined when people that are in the know have grown their net worth substantially. Like, what advice would you give them?
I think I would actually probably ask them a question to start out with. And this is kind of like thinking about where I was early on, where I was early or when I was younger, whatever. What is wealth? And what's the difference between wealth and rich or money? Like, can you discern the difference between these things? And I think to me, it comes down to simply how much of it you keep. And then further, it starts to flip. And then it's like how what you're keeping is then kind of flipping and generating for you. So it's kind of a cycle. Not a lot of people can start at the point where it's generating for them automatically. First, you have to keep it, and then you have to get that to build up. And I guess now I got to think about where I would go from there, but that's where I would start. I don't know if you have something.
Start with getting them to focus on what they want, what they're trying to accomplish, and what it means to them to be wealthy in the first place, huh?
Right.
Gotcha.
I would, if someone's just starting out, just getting a job, I would probably say, the simplest thing to do is if to start building wealth, I would probably say start investing in the stock market early. Index fund, a low growing safe stock that covers the S&P 500. I would start there, and whether you're doing $100, $200 a month, start there as far as investing to build wealth. If I just wanted to give someone wanted a simple answer on how to do it. But another thing, like I would say too, if they're just starting out while you're young, and this is the question kind of goes along with another question you had mentioned earlier, Doreen, if we had to start all over, what would we do to build wealth? I would say, while you're young and you're in your 20s, I would probably figure out like what you're passionate about. And which is kind of cliche, it's kind of hard to do at that point in your life. But I would think about it like what you enjoy doing and what you like doing, and figure out how to monetize that and make money around it. It's because it's easy. A lot easier these days to do that, to find out what you're interested in, what you like, and monetize that. But I would figure out what you like first. But I would get a job first, get a W-2 job, make some money coming in, but also so you can pay the bills, but also figure out like how to hustle and build up what you're passionate about on the side, because you're young, you don't have a lot of responsibilities, you just have yourself, and take that time and energy to build that up. Because if you do that in your 20s, you'll definitely thank yourself in your 30s by doing that grind. So that's just my simple advice. I know people probably hear it over and over, but it's the truth. Like,
yeah, I completely agree. It's cool because the answers were pretty similar, and mine is pretty close to that as well. I'd be listening to a lot of different people. Dave Ramsey, like, I don't agree with everything he said, but something he said really stuck out to me, and that was a conversation about savings rate. And I think if I were to talk to like my younger self or anybody who's just getting started, the practical advice would be focused solely on the amount of money you're committed to saving every single month, first and foremost. And then the more like sentimental advice, which is still going to be super helpful long term, to your point, Joe, would be focus on discovering who you are, what you like, what you're passionate about, what you enjoy learning, and then kind of like with savings rate, like almost a dedication rate or something. How much time are you willing to dedicate towards getting better at what you are passionate about? While you're doing that and you're working your normal job, focus on your savings rate. Like start off at 10% and work as hard as possible to increase that savings rate, because I truly think that like once you start saving money, you get comfortable and used to a certain portion of that check not ever being allowed to be spent or touched, then any other investment strategy that you learn along the way is great because you're already used to not touching the money. So whether it's going into a bank account, whether it's going into the stock market, whether it's going into crypto, or whether it's going into real estate, it's like the number one objective is you got to have the money to invest in the first place. And you got
Exactly.
to have the patience and the dedication to consistently put into whatever investment fund you're going to put into. That's what I would tell younger me, because that's where I struggled. It wasn't so much like finding a higher paying job. It was saving the extra money that I was making along the way.
That's very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Like when I think of advice for younger me, what's weird is I still would have been like, all right, have fun. Like that's good.
Absolutely.
However, like, yo, learn something, man. You don't have to be, it's okay to be good at Guitar Hero or, playing Final Fantasy, whatever. Like that's okay.
Yeah.
But can you drop 10, not even the cash savings. It's like, can you invest 10% of that time in being a better version of you? Learning a skill, learning anything, trying to build something, play around. Because I mean, I feel like personally wasted 5-6 years of like early 20s, late teens, really just not utilizing my free time, investing in myself. Like, and knowing how I was then, I would feel a lot more confident in my success of doing that than even trying to get, my mind wasn't right to save. So I know myself. There's no way I would have saved $1. But if I had invested in my, my mentality and understanding that credit cards aren't evil, that just make sure you can pay it off, just you use those to your advantage. And then savings and investing, like the difference between those two, like savings, it doesn't mean just putting cash away. And then at the same time, investing isn't unapproachable, because I think a lot of people have this tier of like, you have to be wealthy to invest. At least that's what I believed. So I would have needed to have some energy or something to dispel a lot of that. And then even understanding that there are ways to invest where you get paid. It's like you invest in whether that's dividends or, I guess maybe not as approachable for everyone, but, real estate. You can see fruits of your investments along the way. So it would have been a little bit different, just thinking about the mindset that I had in my youth, and it would have been heavily skewed towards get your mind right, before trying to drill in, because I can see myself. I'm talking to myself right now. Hey, you need to save more. Yeah, sure. It's a dollar drink night at whatchamacallit. I'm about to spend all these $10. It would have. Not gonna,
That makes perfect sense, man. And sometimes like it does take those moments where you like bump against the wall and you learn the hard way before you can get passionate about like consistently saving or consistently investing, or before you get that feeling of like I have to do better because I've tried it this way and it didn't work for my overall happiness. Right. So I agree, like younger me probably wouldn't have listened to all the advice, but I do think that there's like benefit to having a blueprint laid out for people that whether they do or don't choose to follow it, like I think that so many of us don't have the blueprint. Whether we would or wouldn't follow it is irrelevant because we didn't fully get the blueprint in the first place, right?
Yep. So I think to that go ahead, Lewis.
No, I was gonna say I think that's part of it. Like the knowledge just wasn't there, or just wasn't told about it, or it just was never investing, growing wealth, just was never brought up. It was just trying to get by. That was it. Trying to get by, have some fun. I remember, I mean, if I had $100 saved in the bank back younger self, that was awesome. I was doing well, doing really good for myself. But that $100 didn't last long. I mean, after a while, you figure out like you always dip into it and other priorities. Just didn't have the discipline. Like I knew, all I knew was make money, spend money. That's it.
Yeah.
Ain't know nothing else to do with it. You make money, spend money on things you want, and that's how you're supposed to live.
Man, all it took was one console to drop, and that savings is gone.
Oh, it's gone.
They call
It's
it
gone.
$100.
Is that,
Console game, the one night out, yeah, gone.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
man, like you think back of all of those times when it's like, man, I probably spent that 10% of savings or investing money on like food and drinks, and that didn't get me anywhere, right? Like maybe the drinks got me a little bit of fun, but I could have eaten less takeout. And so it's just like I think about like as we talk through this gap, that's where I think the real place to tackle the issue is to like educate and inform as much as possible certain groups that I don't think are getting that education, and especially from people that might be more relatable to them and to their way of life. You know, like if you look at these platforms that are up now, like Earn Your Leisure and some of these podcasts that are really, really helpful because you see people that might look like you or you might be able to relate to talking about these financial terms or these tools or these systems. I think that that's going to go a long way towards helping the next generation of young kids think of investing as more of a cool thing. Think of investing as something that's tangible, something that they can actually do because other people that look and talk and have the same experiences as they have done it and have showed them how to do it and have talked about how to do it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And you know, the key is with that is not only them hearing it, but man, starting as early as you can. Like that's really the key, is like starting as early as you can. Like, I mean, there's opportunities. I mean, I even, you know, back in college, like there was opportunities where we got financial aid back or student loans back. Like you got reimbursement. So you had opportunities to invest or do something smart with it, as opposed to, you know, buying the latest gaming console, latest TV, or spending it out. Like I can tell you what, half of that money, I wasted it. That's all I can tell you. Like, yeah, it was just wasted money.
It's crazy to think like how, I don't know. It's, I guess the more we talk about it, it's like, yeah, your mindset has to be right first, because otherwise no amount of money in this world could come your way and it's not going to stick. Like, and I can think about, you know, how we used to hear one thing, you hear about the lotto curse. It's not a lotto curse. It's just you've gotten way more money than you are conditioned or educated. Like you don't know what to do with it. Like and I think of myself, like you give me, it doesn't matter, $200 million when I'm early 20s. I don't know how much, you know, I don't know that I would have educated myself. It would have been irresponsible. And like, go ahead.
Let's be honest. We probably, we'd have been lucky if any of the three of us would have held on to it.
I trust y'all more than me.
I hear you. I don't trust me. I don't trust younger me. I don't. I would have been a changed man.
I've been to Arkansas with a private jet. For what? Where you going?
No gas.
But I'm flying private when I get
there. Yeah. I'm glad you got faith in me, Joe, but I don't trust younger me. I'd have been wrong. I'd have been a changed man.
But it's like when I was about to get my first job out of college, I kid you not, man, me and my roommate were looking up Maseratis. how much for a Maserati. So I know I can't be trusted at 21. I know
Oh, that's
Oh
funny.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. You wouldn't get me to invest none of that. The real estate, what you talking about?
exactly. And then, I mean, you see it too with like, you see some athletes, and then some people question, like, how did this person make X amount of money and go broke? It's like
that.
their mindset. What's that?
No, when people ask me those questions, I'm like, the same way you made half of what you made and went broke. Like,
Yep.
Exactly.
You're buying all this stuff. You're helping family out. You're
Yep.
helping friends. Yeah, I would have been no good. We'd have had some fun times, but it would have been all been gone.
Yeah. And I feel like that's because they, like, honestly, that to me just says that you really don't understand what wealth is. You
Yep.
think that wealth is just a number in your bank account, and you think that just because that number hits a certain point that it's infinite. So it's like, once I hit X amount, I basically got infinite money, because I'd imagine it feels like that. But once you realize infinite is finite, it's gonna be a tough situation.
Yeah. I think it's a totally different mindset from today. If I inherited a lump sum of money, it probably wouldn't even know about it. Just be, how can I make this grow?
Exactly. I'm
Pay
not
my
even,
taxes, and then how can I make the rest of this work for me? That's about it.
yep.
completely agree. When do you feel like you started to learn more about how this whole process works? Like, was it you actively going out looking for books, listening to podcasts, or was it like somebody gave you some game that you knew that like helped you get started on your journey?
I think it was my former employer talked a lot about it, building wealth and making money. I think the cool thing is too, like, they always gave all new employees, they gave them the Total Money Makeover book by Dave Ramsey, which it probably took me maybe 5 or 6 years of being there to actually like read and actually implement it. Like, I read it, and they always talked about it. Like, they gave debt-free awards, so that incentivized people.
That's dope.
Yeah, there. But I think at the point, what I was making compared to what I had to pay off, numbers just didn't add up. So it was a get by survival. But I think once I got to the point where I think I was making a good in my late 20s, where I feel like I was making a good income. I think the first few years I was just doing wrong because I just wanted to enjoy a little bit, not living paycheck to paycheck. And then I think I think it just hit me one day. It's like, dude, you broke, man. Like, you got all this debt, and yeah, you make money, but you broke. And I was like, it's just time to get rid of it, because I just wanted to have options. And I think once I paid the debt off, like, I could think, like, as soon as I paid off all my debt, like, everything became so much more clear to me. Was like, oh, I got money sitting in my bank account. Okay, what do I do? What do I do with it now? Okay, you go invest. How do I invest? So that's where it just all trickled for me. And I was like, all right, I'm just interested in this personal finance stuff. And like, man, I wish I'd have started a lot earlier. But that's really where it triggered with me. Once I got over, the shadow of like paying off my debt, then just opened up everything. Like, the sun came up, and like all these paths of investing and things to do with money just came flooding in. So I think that's where it started with me.
Nice. Okay. So you would recommend, based on like what you learned from like your mentors and from some of the literature you read, paying off debt as aggressively as possible as a starting point.
Yeah, I would say, obviously, if you have debt and stuff, like if you're investing in real estate and stuff and it's making you money, then obviously, like, I mean, I think that's a personal choice of whether you want to pay it off or not. But I definitely think you can leverage that debt better, as opposed to definitely credit cards. You got high interest credit cards, wasting money, higher interest student loans, you're wasting money each month. So I would recommend starting there to pay it off, because in that case, you're just losing money. Your money's not working for you. It's going backwards each month if you're paying ridiculous interest rates. So yeah, I would start there. If you got credit card or student loan debt, priority credit card debt, I would start there first to start paying it off.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Joe, I'm curious for you.
I guess before, is there anything like, is there a certain rate where you start to consider saying, you know what, maybe I would go ahead and try to beat that and let that debt ride out?
Well, I think the thing is with me, and this may be different for everybody. I think the thing with me is like, yeah, I can compare the numbers and I can look at like this method will probably make me more if I invest here than actually paying off my debt. This may be mathematically, it may be a smarter move. But I think the biggest thing with me was one, just believing that I could do it, that I could pay my debt, that challenge. And two, just having the discipline to be able to manage my money and be able to control my money and get to the point where I'm comfortable with using credit cards for getting points, paying them off every month. You know, investing consistently. And like Jareen talked about earlier, getting the habit of consistently saving. So I think that was more important to me with building those habits than actually like looking over here like, hey, I can go take this money and invest it in here and it'll grow a lot faster. Obviously, like there was investments I missed out on, but I wasn't ready. I don't think I had a strong enough foundation. And
Yeah.
maybe I would have got there if I would have done it. But I think those things were key with me with doing that to build the practices that I have now. That allows me to be able to go invest in stocks, allows me to go invest in real estate, allows me those options to do that because I have the discipline built up over the years of paying off debt and saving and investing of doing that.
That's fair. That makes sense. Great answer.
Yeah, I just don't think I just don't think everyone's ready, you know, because say I don't build those habits to build those disciplines and I go, hey, cool, I can go invest this money over here. All right, I'm making money here in real estate, but then I come back, okay, cool, I got this property, but then things back at home ain't right. I still got these bad habits. And I'm like, I can never get this next investment property because I can't build up again because I'm making money from this, but I'm actually going backwards because I'm doing worse now that I got more money coming in.
Right.
So that's why I think it's important to get those boundaries. I know a lot of people use the numbers, and I'm not going to argue the numbers make sense. If you got the discipline and you feel that you can do it, can control it on that side, then I say go for it. But if you don't, you've been struggling to get right for a while. I would say get your foundation right before you go over there.
That's fair.
That makes so much sense.
I guess for me, I can't really think of too many catalysts, but I think it started with just like actually taking in information. And was it Jareen, did you suggest like audiobooks for that?
Maybe. I was on a kick for a while, so I may have. I was telling everybody I came across after I read Rich Dad Poor Dad
Yep.
to change my mind. And then I started diving into like the more practical stuff. That's like more of the like you can do it, like get you amped up. I could be one day. But then like I started getting into a lot more practical things. So it may have been around that time.
That's fair. Because I remember it was like a combination of things. So it was that starting to just kind of like ingest information in different books. Audible was great for that. And then I don't remember when it was, but I was just like, all right, you know what? I just want to be 1% better, and the arbitrary percentage, but I want to be just slightly better than yesterday. So it was like, how did I elevate a little bit today versus yesterday? And so that's really those two things. And then just over time, it was just like things got better. I remember one instance was, I think it was actually two of them were with Nikita, my wife. And she was like, you don't have a credit card? And this is what dispelled it being evil. I was like, no, I don't have a credit card. She was like, you should get a credit card. Do you see all these points and all these things you could get? And I remember being honestly kind of embarrassed. And this is the first time I really cared about my credit report. Before that, I didn't care. And I remember getting declined for several, including the one she had. And I was like, oh, Lord. So finally, thank goodness, I think Capital One gave me a card and I was able to kind of build from there. So that was like my journey and actually starting to watch and care about my credit grow. So I'm thankful for that moment. I kind of remember the point where I was like, oh, I should pay attention to my bottom line, what I'm spending. I don't remember whether that was triggered by Nikita saying something or just realizing that their rates way cheaper. I looked at what I was paying for car insurance, and it was something like 200, 300, 400 a month, something crazy. And it was like, hold on, I can just go to websites, get quotes, and change this, and
Right.
immediately effectively make $100, $200, $300 extra a month.
Yep.
So then I looked at, oh, well, can I do that with my phone? Can I do that with, this X, Y, Z? So I was shopping everything to just reduce bottom lines. And a lot of people either don't know or don't care or don't realize how big of a difference that can make. So that was another moment. And then I think I learned how to be a more patient investor with crypto. So I think it was not the first one. I remember the first one. I wasn't that actively involved with it, but the second time it came back up and it was going crazy. And I remember, I had the mindset of just, oh, it's going to go up. And when it goes up, I'm just going to invest. So I was just putting money in, pulling money in. And the next thing you know, it starts going down. And I caught myself selling. And then I caught myself what I call high frequency manually trading all these altcoins. And I realized I was just basically selling when it was going down and buying when it was going up, was losing, just dumb, all dumb. So at this point, I learned, like, if I'm investing, I can't do it with any sort of emotion. So when you look naturally, we all respond humanly, like, oh, this sucks. And when it's going up, we all have the instinct to want to, oh, throw it in, let's get in. Everybody's making money except for us. But if you act on those, you're going to lose, like almost every single time. So it was probably like kind of a combination of all those things that kind of just got me to be like, okay, this is, what I need to do. I need to be patient. I need to respect my, bottom line, things that I'm spending, what's happening, and be cautious, especially of things that are recurring every month. And then two, I need to, invest in myself, and make sure my credit's right and use credit. So it was kind of a combination of all those things along a period of time that helped me to really understand wealth.
Gotcha. That's good, man. Yeah. Like I remember talking to my dad and my mom about it, and I did get some good advice and some good insight. I wasn't in a place to really follow their advice. Like, I remember my dad telling me, like, hey, don't go get the most expensive car you can afford. And I went and did it, like, literally the day after he told me I bought the most expensive car I can afford. So I completely agree with, like, the notion that you have to get your mind right first. And I think that along those lines, once you start to get your mind right, then it's about having a plan and then putting guardrails in place to stick to that plan. So, like, for you, Lewis, it sounds like paying off debt first was the most important next step in your plan, because that was going to help you build the good habits that you needed to manage money better, even after you were in debt. And in that process, you learned so much along the way that you could just really take off once you got the debt off. And so, even if that wasn't the same plan you followed, Joe, regardless of, like, the steps that you took certain steps. It was like, oh crap, I need to fix my credit. What's the plan to fix my credit? And then you started to implement that plan. Like, all right, keep going until I get approval. Once I get approval, act in this way with this card, learn other things. And so I think what I'm kind of taking from what both of you guys are saying is, like, in order to improve your position wherever you're at along this wealth gap, spectrum, it's having a plan for where you want to get to next, and then putting things in place so that you can follow that plan through. And I think it might look different for everybody. For some people, it might be pay everything off. It's not actively putting more money in your pocket, like a real estate loan or something. For other people, that might be save a certain percentage every month and automate those savings so that you could then learn along the way and invest that money in the future. For some people, it might be, I'm already diligent in saving, I'm already investing, but I have to set rules so that my emotions don't take over when the market does start to tank, and I don't sell out of panic or desperation. And so my plan and my guardrails say I can't sell when it's on a low, and I can't put money in when it's at an all-time high. Like whatever that strategy is, it seems and it feels like if you're not actively following a path or following a plan or a process, then inevitably you're not going to increase your wealth. And so maybe that's the short answer is learn what the wealthy people do and then put a plan in place to follow what they do. And
Yeah,
so few of us actually do those two steps.
I love that.
Nice. Yeah, man. I think this is good. I love these conversations.
Yeah, very, very good conversation. We definitely, I think that's probably a good place for us to wrap it up. And thank everyone for watching. We're going to continue to do these more regularly. We're making a commitment to do these more. So if you guys like what you saw, if you guys have any questions or any feedback you want us to drop it below in the comments. And please feel free to share these videos, like them, commenting. We're trying to get this information out to as many people as possible. It definitely helps us to grow the channel and just spread the word. So we appreciate you all for listening. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.
Peace.
Peace.